Hey guys, and welcome back to my review of the second episode of the 6th season of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., otherwise titled Window of Opportunity. Now, as per the usual, let me start with a little bit of a general statement. The second episode of this season has got a lot of callbacks to previous seasons, a lot of moments sending us down memory lane, kind of making us think, how's that one impacting this current moment in the runtime of the series? But at the same time, we've still got no reveal on who this Coulson is. Kind of makes a lot of sense. I mean, we're on the second episode, but at the same time, we kind of got mixed signals. They're giving us mixed signals, kind of making us think, okay, he's an alternate reality Coulson. Okay, he's possibly our Coulson, kind of got resurrected, but only he's got no memory of who he really is, and has got all of these implanted memories, making him into this character, Sarge. There's a lot of talk about resurrection as well, coming back as butterflies, but nonetheless, let's head into the events of this episode and try to break down this episode, try to think of the possibilities, and of course, as usual, you're going to be getting a trailer breakdown tomorrow for the upcoming week's episode, and possibly a theory video sometime this week. Now, the first scene of the episode is pretty much the scene that we got for a sneak peek this week, and even though I did not break it because there wasn't really much to break down about this scene, there's actually more to say about it when combined with another scene on this episode. You know, this is the first heist, and he's talking about people wanting to do something dramatic in these kind of situations. And then on the second scene, the jewelry store heist, he talks about people wanting to do something heroic in these kind of situations, but I'd save their own skin. Now, this statement could be about one of two things. Something that we are yet to discover as the first one, something about Sarge's origin and whatnot, but the other option is this is his catchphrase. So we're introduced to Coulson on the first season of the series, and his catchphrase is Tahiti, it's a magical place, and then we're introduced to this new version of the character, Sarge, and he's basically giving us a reference to our Coulson. So he could be our Coulson, he could be an alternate reality Coulson. Well, you talk like a Coulson, you sound like a Coulson, and you look like a Coulson, you're gonna have a catchphrase. Now there's all the talk about experience, you know, the currency. It indicates that it's not his first rodeo, and it isn't. They talk about paper currency with faces on them, and he's like, good, one of those. Now Sarge over here picks up the shotgun in the store, tries it, and makes the comment, still using combustion here. Might be child's play after all. Now the one question that came to mind over here was, is Sarge not the one who targeted this planet? Because if he's just discovering that they're still using combustion, then he didn't do his homework, he didn't study it, he didn't analyze it, and there might be someone greater, someone bigger at play, someone who possibly hired him as well to perform this mission. Now the final take out of this scene is the Ohio road map that Pax picks before he leaves the store, and I believe that moment is about establishing where this team's at. Now the Sarge badass truck kind of reminds us of the Ghost Rig out of the comics. I didn't mention that last week on my review video, but I did mention it on my theory video because it was an integral part of my theory over there. Now on another note, and I thought this was kind of confirming that this might actually be the Ghost Rig, we've got Pax calling it a truck, and then 2 seconds later we've got Sarge referring to it as a rig. So I'm thinking over here, there is the possibility that they're basically trying to give us a hint, like, hey, you see this guy whose identity you've got questions over? Yeah, that guy is the only guy out of this entire group that's calling this truck a rig. But nonetheless, it does seem like I was wrong about how they always disappear as per the trailer of the second episode, because they've got two ways to doing that. The first of these two is about porting out of a place and into another place, and the second one is all about the cloaking technology they've got on that rig. Now obviously May did see Coulson on last week's episode. I did not think so because there's the surprise tone when she says the name Coulson on this week's episode and on the trailer of the episode as well, but nonetheless she's seen Coulson and she's told Mac about it. Now Mac in the beginning is trying to hide it from everyone, kind of trying at the very start not to cause a scare until they understand what they're dealing with. Now he's assigned though the case of understanding and analyzing the situation with the doppelganger to none other than our new S.H.I.E.L.D. member, Dr. Marcus Benson, and Dr. Marcus Benson comes with a lot of callbacks to previous seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So Marcus Benson starts by claiming that he believes that all of this, you know, the situation with this fake Coulson is all about a previous mistake made by S.H.I.E.L.D. He talks about fear manifestations, which is a reference to the fear dimension on Season 5. He talks about nanomasks, which is a reference to Season 2 and Agent 33. But then he talks about Inhumans, and I'm assuming that's also a reference to Season 2, the first time they basically introduced Inhumans on the series. And finally, there is this talk about LMDs, which is basically a reference to Ada, a reference to Season 4, and a lot of LMDs replacing the SHIELD team. But on another note, I might have forgotten mentioning this on my review of the premiere of the season for Marcus Benson and Culver University. Now on the movie side, you've got Bruce Banner and his association with Culver University, but there's also the TV side, Victor and Janet Stein having studied in Culver University. But to continue with the callbacks, Marcus Benson wants to talk to Holden Radcliffe, aka the idiot who designed the LMDs. But let us though jump to Fitz for a moment here, and Ian DeCasticard does a really great role over here. By the end of the episode, he's pretty much the captain of this ship, and there's this thing over here that makes me think he's not going to be rescued by the 4-man team that's out to rescue him. But I'm going to be talking about that later in detail on my theory video. Now obviously Fitz didn't give himself powers using the serum that he created. It was only used, and as I mentioned, for him to blend in as yet another alien. And not before too long in the events of this episode, his identity has been discovered by the aliens that he's been mingling with. But on the very first scene that we meet Fitz on this episode, we get a reference to Zendarian Snail. And that's basically a reference to Season 5 of the series, the 6th episode to be precise, and back then he was disgusted by it, and this time around he's scared of it. And of course there's always the obvious reference to the origin of that snail, Xandar. But obviously what gives Fitz away over here, the identity of Fitz away, is that he claims he's from a wasteland north of his planet. Now, for one thing, the planet's name is Sivas. I've never read the name before on the pages of the comics, and I know for sure that it's never been mentioned in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But for another thing, the claim that he is from the north of his planet kind of fits with the fact that he's from Scotland. It's north of the UK, it's pretty much north of a lot of things that are basically south of it, and the only thing you find going straight up north from Scotland is just ocean. Now to speak about Fitz for the rest of this episode, he does use his brains in order to stay alive, he promises a lot, he delivers a lot, but most importantly, he wouldn't let another one die in his place. But in the end though, we got a doctor reference because what Fitz did over there was rely on his experiences as the doctor in order to beat Vero at his own game. So yeah, he's using himself, the alter ego that he had in the framework, the one that is yet to come out when it comes to this version of Fitz, in order to make decisions that would influence the outcomes of future events and make them play out in his favor.
It wasn't so hard to predict. There's a part of me that knows how uncompromising hateful men can be.
But that though is the majority of what we've got on Fitz, so moving back to Earth and looking at Sarge and his team, it seems like there are two ways they've got to port over here. The first of which is marking the place they're gonna port out to, that way there are no complications when they've got to cross over to another point. Like the case was with a museum, they had to demolish it, take it out of the picture, in order to make sure that when Sarge crossed over, he didn't become part of the museum, it did not come crumbling all over his head. But jumping back to S.H.I.E.L.D., Mac knows about Yo-Yo and Keller. Keller is a friend of Fox's, so he's a little bit beaten up over the death of Agent Fox, like at the end of episode 1. And obviously what Sarge used over there wasn't an ICER, as the captions on Hulu stated, and that makes a lot of sense because that other option would have been extremely anticlimactic. I mean, every statement that Sarge made at that moment basically hinted at the idea that he was gonna kill the guy. But circling back though to Marcus Benson, who happens to be giving us a lot more callbacks, you never told me that your boss has died before and that he was brought back to life. So maybe he's made it back again, which is basically one of the running theories about Phil Coulson and about Sarge at this moment. There's our knowledge that the guy has DNA and that the DNA matches that of Coulson's. There's Yo-Yo's statement about bringing him back, which was a hot topic. So it's either a reference to the idea that they did talk about it post his second death, which is something that we didn't see on screen, or it's a reference to what happened at the end of Season 5. We had two teams, one that was against saving Coulson and letting the world go to shit, and the other one was with saving Coulson and basically letting the world go to shit. Now just so we don't get into the argument, the DNA is not Coulson's because he had to strip away a lot of markers off of it, all he had to do was strip away all the radiation effects. Now, given all that Sarge has been doing, the footage that was unlocked by the end of this episode, the weapon that he was attempting to test on this episode that he did test or did use on the trailer of the season, all of that kind of indicates that his DNA could have been polluted, either over the years or over the 1 year, really depending on who he really is. Let alone that all that we see on that DNA, all that radiation, might not be something that is really survivable. So put that together with all the snowflakes talk about resurrection, put it together with the statement that Pax makes, taking a load off in another life, and you've got the huge possibility that Sarge over here is basically our full Coulson resurrected, and that he's been resurrected, possibly, by a demonic entity. Now down the road in the events of the episode, we've got Sarge telling Jacko to keep an eye on Pax. He's starting to sound like Tinker, which basically indicates that they might have killed Tinker, the guy in the wall, and then he also mentions that they might need to start looking for replacements. So yeah, this could mean that this guy is all about the mission, so I wouldn't care about anyone, even a team member, if the mission is not going to get completed, or he's just confirming that theory of mine, he's got no empathy, which basically means that he's got no empathy for no one, his team members included, family included, if this guy were to have any family. But still on Sarge here though, what he's looking for, with the jewelry heist, that's all about something that he could weaponize. So it is something that he's planning to use with the weapon that he was trying to test at the end of this episode, and the very same weapon that we did see him use on the trailer of the season. So yeah, the crystals that they were robbing on this episode are basically about fuel to that weapon or ammo to it. But we've got May realizing how this works, all the teleportation from one place to the other. We've also got May in an action sequence, and I'm sure a lot of us have missed that. And we finally got her in the rig, beating down Pax and then beating down Jacko. But in addition to that, we've got Snowflake asking Jacko not to kill May, not in her absence at least. Now once again, this is one of those statements that could go two ways. You could look at it as something that means that this girl is bloody. She's pretty bloody, by the way. Or there's the possibility that she's got a power, like any person that she kills does indeed get resurrected. But we get that scene close to the end of the episode. May looks at Sarge, calls him Coulson. He freezes for a moment, doesn't comment about it. Butterfly pushes her back into the vault of the jewelry store. Both her and Sarge close the portal and they are gone for good. So yeah, for one thing, May froze when she saw that guy, which I did talk about when I broke down the trailer. Like May's basically gonna have a problem pulling the trigger when it comes to Coulson. But as Sarge and team drive away in that rig, we've got Jacko. Sarge, you froze a little. That word Coulson, what does that mean? And we've got Sarge respond, I don't know, but it rings a bell. And the look on his face, that rings a bell. A very big bell. But the last thing on this episode, and before the stinger, is that Marcus Benson discovered what these people have been doing with every place that they've gone to. Wherever these people came from, they've destroyed it. Now focusing on this scene, this footage that Marcus Benson has unlocked, we get to see Kree writing all over that screen, like basically the code that has been broken in order to view this footage is all about Kree code. Now three things come to mind over here. These guys are using Kree technology and they know Kree, which is a possibility. These guys are Kree, which is an impossibility given how they look. And the final one is, these people work for the Kree. Like whoever it is did hire them in order to destroy our planet, that's basically Kree. But speaking though of the stinger of the episode, Fitz's plans to head to Kitson, that's basically all about the events of next week's episode. Fear and Loathing on the planet of Kitson. Now going back to episodes 5 and 6 of season 5, if you do remember, we only see Fitz wake up from his long sleep at the end of episode 5, like the stinger of the episode, just like the case was with last week's episode. But then on the 6th episode of the 5th season, we get Fitz versus Cassius versus the aliens versus the Kree with the help of Enoch in order to save his team, just like we saw him versus Vero on this episode, and using the help of Enoch in order to save the crew of this ship. Now combine that with the mention of Zendarian Snail and the mention of the planet Kitson on this episode, which really mirrors the mention of both on episode 6 of season 5, and you have basically got one massive reference to season 5 right here. Now the one thing about the format of next week's episode is I do expect it's going to be like this week, so we're going to be missing the Earth team, we're not going to be hearing from them until the stinger of the episode, just like what happened with Daisy and Jemma on this one. On this note though, what we watched on the first trailer, what we thought were wormholes, those weren't wormholes. Those were all about the Zephyr making jumps through space. But finally though, one thing that I missed mentioning throughout this video is the fact that the seer was mentioned. Fitz and Enoch are still under the impression that the Earth would get destroyed, and their limited knowledge has them working towards getting Fitz back into cryosleep and making sure that he does make it to the future, to 2091, and reunite with Jemma Simmons.
I, on the other hand, am confident we will find a way to return you to cryostasis. According to the seer, you are needed in the future to prevent an extinction-level event.
I just want to find Jemma.
But that being said though, let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this episode. If you did like the events on this episode, let me know what you think of Coulson, if you got any other theories than the ones that I presented on last week's theory video. And finally, let me know if you did like this video by dropping it a much appreciated like, subscribing to this channel, and make sure while you're at it to enable notifications in order to get updates whenever I upload a video, publish a community post, or start a live stream. But until the next time that you tune in for another one of my videos, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or otherwise, thank you so much for tuning into this video, and have a great day.